The war was on its tail, and the blizzard was calming down. Two soldier brothers were roaming around, seemingly detached from the group. It appeared as if they were looking for someone or something. They continued onward without struggle. They thought it was hopeless. They thought they were insane for going out alone like this. But alas, they loved that someone very much. One spotted the cave entrance and told the other, "He might be there, not all hope is lost," while the other listened. The two brothers carried on to the cave entrance. It was a dark and gloomy place. The entrance looked like a mouth of a big creature. A blood-curdling scream came from the cave. They stepped inside, one after the other. They found who they were looking for, their eldest brother. Or at least a part of him. Acid almost completely evaporated his body, his organs sticking out. The cave entrance closed. Their screams were hidden by the raging blizzard, and they were never found. They were documented as missing in the file report. Nobody ever knew what happened to the three, or perhaps, should I say, 2.5 brothers. There once was a man who lived alone in a forest. He didn't live in a small hut, of course not. He and his wife had built a large home, rooms and basements, all by themselves. It was all made from wood. Oak wood was the primary choice. oh darling, when we pass on, I pray I'm with you forever," Jennifer sang to Tom. Oh dear, I promise we'll be together forever, even if one passes first," he sang back. They both started to dance under the porch light of theirs. The stars watched them dance, and when they finished, the stars would praise them. Jennifer and Tom have been together since they were 14. Now this lovely couple is in their 30s, but they feel like they've been together for even longer than that, as if they've lived a life together before. They lay happily in their beds, they kiss and dance with each other, a couple filled with love. Everything is perfect. Everything truly was at its highest. But one day there came a harsh winter storm. Out of nowhere came a blizzard that covered the ground in an instant. Tom was inside, putting fire in the fireplace, while Jennifer was outside. Tom heard Jennifer scream and rushed outside in his heavy coat. He brought a torch with him as well. He ran to the voice, racing the snow that threw itself onto the ground. Jennifer, where are you?" he yelled. His heart was racing, and his ears were taking in the sound of each beat. He stopped, standing silently, waiting for something, anything. He heard nothing and continued forward. Tears ran down his face as the blizzard kept growing and growing. "Damn it," he said weakly. The snow is on his shins now. Tries to move forward but can't. He gives up a few minutes later, walking back to his home in defeat. The night sky covers him like a blanket. Tom sits down in his chair next to the fire. He starts crying, eventually crying himself to sleep. 2 days later, as he slowly gets out of bed, he decides that he's going to look for Jennifer, or what remains of her at least. He searches and searches, the warm sun blazing on his back. Surprisingly, for winter, it's 60 degrees. The sun sits above Tom as he finishes its search. He sees Jennifer's boots coming out of some snow, and a crow sits next to them. He rushes over and sweeps the snow away. The crow then flies away. As expected, she's dead, and he's filled with sorrow once again. Her body is freezing, and she's without her winter coat. "If only I went with you," he says. He feels as if it's slightly his fault that she died. He carries her body back home. He takes a bit, but when he finally returns home, he starts digging a grave. The sun starts setting, and he puts Jennifer into the grave. Her coffin was custom made. It's a wooden grave, but it's painted purple with all sorts of roses on it. Rest easy now. You've been taken early, my love, he says sorrowfully. He starts to cry. He's alone once again. Nobody understood him like Jennifer. He starts his way back inside when a bird sits down in front of his door. It's the same crow from earlier, that beautiful black feathers and purple eyes. Jennifer loved crows, he says. Hey, little crow guy or girl, wait here and I'll get him some food, he says, acting like it could understand him. Yet the crow did understand him. Not just that, but the crow got closer. He runs inside and grabs some bread mixed with seeds. Jennifer and Tom would usually go on walks and feed the birds. He runs back outside and puts the food on the ground. Here, eat up. I can give you more if you come back every day, he says. The crow walks towards the food and starts to eat it. When the crow finishes the food, it caws, as if it's trying to speak to Tom. The crow then leaves and Tom tries following it, but his body is heavy. The grief over Jennifer takes over again, and he shuts the door behind him, going to his bed and sinking into it. He wakes up. It's dark outside. He goes to the kitchen and makes food. Something small but sustainable. Once he finishes cooking and eating his food, he goes back to sleep. Caws can be heard outside Tom's door. He slowly sits up. The caws continue as he goes to get the bread and seeds. He opens the front door and sees the same crow again, waiting for food. Hey buddy, how was it outside? Must have been cold, he says. Being alone is getting to him. The crow starts eating as Tom pours some seeds onto the ground. The crow looks at Tom and caws again, leaving right after. Tom's smile fades away and he goes back inside, repeating what he did yesterday. Tom naturally wakes up and notices the time is around the same time the crow came yesterday. He gets up and grabs the seeds, putting some shredded bread in it too. He waits next to the front door and waits. A minute later, he hears the car and opens the door to see the crow waiting patiently. Tom puts the food bucket on the ground inside his home. Here, why don't you come in and stay warm? He asks the crow, as if it could answer him. The crow surprisingly walks inside, looking around the place for a second, but then immediately starts eating the food. Tom crouches slowly, reaching his hand out to the crow to pet it. The crow looks at his hand and gives Tom a petting pass. Tom pets the crow gently, feeling its soft feathers. You're just beautiful, he says, smiling at the crow. The crow finishes the food, hops back to the door and flies away again. Tom makes himself some food. This time his heart isn't so heavy, but it's still shattered. He seems crazy, but he sees some of Jennifer in the crow. He eats the chicken he cooked and then goes to bed. A week passes. The same old routine of waking up, getting closer to the crow, making food and sleeping again. Tom doesn't mind the simple life, but he's falling deeper into his sorrow. He goes to feed the crow after waking up. This time, the crow comes inside without Tom needing to set the food down. It flies around and Tom urges him to pet it. Tom is rather surprised by this behavior, but he adores it. Want to go hunting next week? He asks the bird. Caw, caw. The bird replies. Tom smiles and then sits down, watching and petting the crow. Tom shuts the door behind the crow as it leaves, makes himself dinner and then goes to bed just like before. His heart is still deep in despair. Shadows have taken hold of it. But maybe the crow can bring some form of light. It was finally time to hunt. The crow came once again to the door when Tom opened it. Tom fed it as usual. Once the crow had finished eating, Tom grabbed his coat and rifle. Ready to hunt? He asked. crow just hopped to the door and waited patiently. Tom opened the door and saw a little bit of snow melting on the ground. The crow and Tom left, and Tom locked the door behind them. They started walking into the forest, and Tom prayed that he'd be okay this time. He walked and walked with the crow. They saw some cool animals, like rabbits and deer. Tom slowed down when he saw a rabbit sitting still just ahead of him. The crow was walking beside him and then flew to the tree, ensuring that if the rabbit ran, it would catch it. Tom took aim with his rifle and shot, killing the rabbit with one shot. Tom celebrated his victory and then dashed to the kill. The crow was already there waiting for Tom, starting to pick at the rabbit. The snow started coming down a little harder as Tom began to hunt again, but it didn't stop him. He had continued hunting, looking for one more rabbit. After walking for a few minutes, he had found another rabbit. He took aim and waited for a few seconds, making sure his aim was right since the snow had increased just a bit. He fired his shot and barely missed, hitting the tail of the rabbit. The rabbit dashed away and the crow began racing towards it. Damn it, Tom thought to himself. He ran after the crow. A few minutes later, he had finally caught up, but there was a blood trail along the way he had noticed. He thought nothing of it, as surely it would be the rabbit he had shot. But he was wrong. He looked over to where the trail ended. The snow started falling down even harder than before, almost like the blizzard from before. The crow lay on the paws of an orange fox. The fox must have followed the crow, seeing how low it flew to the ground. Tom was filled with anger and deep sadness. He took aim. His hands were freezing. The fox was looking in the opposite direction that Tom stood in. Boom. The gun had fired right into the head of the fox, killing it in just a few seconds. He ran towards the fox and pushed it aside. Some blood got on his hands, warming his hands up just a little, but not enough. He picked the crow up in his hands, and tears ran down his face. He couldn't do it anymore. He didn't want to move forward. He had lost so much, and he felt that the crow was close to him, just like Jennifer was. The snow was coming down rapidly, covering most of the dead fox. Tom knew he was lost. He didn't know where his home was. But that was fine. He didn't want to go back anyway. This cold wasn't as cold as his heart. A feeling of numbness spread all over him. He couldn't feel anything, or even any pain. His hands used to freeze, but now they are lifeless. His mind goes blank, beginning to fill with just 2 words. End it. He picked up the rifle after setting the crow down. Don't worry, I'll be joining you now, Jennifer. Placing the rifle as close to his temple as he could to make sure he'd only need 1 shot. If only I were next to you in that storm, he said. He slowly pulled the trigger and heard nothing as he dropped. He was at peace. The pain had finally gone away. Blood flowed out onto the snow, turning it from white to red. The snow was cold, as if nothing happened, and kept on coming down, eventually covering Tom's body.